Hello, dear friends. Today we're going to talk about the 5 things you need to do to prepare for NP school, in my opinion. Now, this is a rough transition. It's going to suck badly when you start school, but there are things you can do in advance of it to prepare yourself and your family to set you up for success. I'm a big believer in beginning with the end in mind. So let me offer you 5 tips that can make this transition slightly less sucky for you. 2 of them are going to be things you're going to do well in advance, like the year or even 2 years preceding your time that you start. And the final 3 are going to be tasks that you're going to accomplish in the months preceding your start date. So this is really going to help you guys. So if we haven't met yet, my name's Bree. I'm a nurse practitioner. I make content for nurses, NPs, and students. And let's get to it. The first thing you can do to set yourself up for success is to certify in your specialty. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're in ICU, if you're on a floor, if you're looking for F&P and you work in a clinic, it doesn't matter. All of this is specialty specific. So certify. I know the world of ICU. So ICU nurses get their CCRN, critical care registered nurse. That's the test that they take. Why is it important? Well, number one, if you've been a nurse for a while, it helps you to brush up on what the current guidelines are and forces you to study things your brain hasn't really had to think about in depth for some period of time, like the Patho-Phys behind why you're giving the medications you're giving. You schedule this test. It's a really hard test. It forces you to get in the habit of studying, brushes you up on this material, and a lot of this material helps build onto what your nurse practitioner program is going to teach you. So spend the year before you go back to school working on that. The hospitals often provide lots of resources to help you get the certification. It behooves them for you to be certified. They want a certain percentage of their nurses to be certified. It helps them qualify for magnet or beacon status. So you can get assistance from your organization. It benefits them and it benefits you. So number one, certify, whether you're CCRN or TNCC or trauma, ER, there's even one for progressive care units. So look into what your specialty certification is and just go get it. Number 2, buy your resources early. I say that in all caps, people. It is super, super important. Beginning with the end in mind. And the end is you want to certify. If you can't pass boards, you can't practice, and everything you just went through is null and void. So if you start the program, even if you do some work before the program starts to prepare yourself for boards, it's going to be a much smoother transition when it comes time for graduation and boards preparation. So this is my best tip, hands down. In my opinion, it's my best tip for the entirety of your program and to set you up for success as an NP student. Buy your review material before you even start your program. I bought the Barkley review on CDs before I even started my program and started listening to them in the car. It really helped. Like, it all sounded super foreign when I started, but you know, when you hear things over and over and over again, it starts to slowly seep in. And the other thing I did with it was anytime I had a lecture in class coming up on a certain body system, I would listen to that CD from Barkley, because a lot of the things that they're teaching you are board directed, right? They want to teach you the things that will set you up for success to pass boards. So they're going to teach you a lot of those things. So then the Barkley review helps really make that super concise and whittle it down to just the facts you need to know for the test. So it kind of builds on each other. You know, your Barkley review, your lecture, they all build on each other. And if you've reviewed that material before your class starts, you kind of look like you know what you're doing a little bit more than some of your cohort. So buy your review material early, start listening to it throughout the years of your program, and it'll be a little bit less of a rough transition when it comes time to start studying for your boards. Other resource materials you need to purchase are things that are specific towards your practice and your career track. So again, I'm acute care, so a lot of the commonly used ICU reference materials, the ICU Merino book, you can read it cover to cover. It's super simple and lays it out easily, even for anybody to understand. The ventilator book is a must-have with its accomplice, the advanced ventilator book, critical care pharmacotherapeutics. Okay, these are just all examples, and I'll make a video sometime going in depth into why I think Some of these materials are super helpful, and if you start reading them in advance, it just builds on itself. But those are specific towards my craft and what I do. Go out there and research. Go on to allnurses.com. Go on to other sites where people are talking about these things and figure out what books and what references people in your specialty use, and just go ahead and buy them. You're going to need them one day when you get out into practice anyways. Podcasts. All right. If you're going to a brick and mortar college, like I did, 5 days a week, an hour each way, sometimes sitting in traffic for a while, you got to make the best use of your time. So I would re-listen to lectures, and I listen to a ton of podcasts. So in the description below, I'm going to list links to my favorite podcasts that apply to sort of what I do. For example, I love MCrit. Scott Weingart could teach me anything, any day of the week. The man is brilliant. If you're going into acute care, you need to get to know Scott Weingart. You're going to love him. IDSA, they have a fabulous podcast. They have lots of different guest speakers that come on talking about their kind of subspecialty infectious disease. And the double whammy benefit from this is that it's guideline specific. Okay, I'm going to come back to this later on why guidelines are super important for you to study early on. So IDSA is another good podcast. Medscape is a pretty good podcast. They didn't have quite as many as I wanted them to have, but it's just another resource that you can listen to in the car. It's passive learning. Videos. Whoa. In the beginning, I bought every book on every syllabus. One class, I think I had like 12 books I had to buy. I bought them all. Do you know how many of them I read? Maybe that stack of 4 or 5 on the floor that I still use. The rest of them, either never cracked them open or read one chapter and then was like, why did I spend $300 on this stupid book? Right, y'all, you don't have a ton of time. You're gonna have a ton of material compressed in a very short period of time. And for me, I did an 18-month program. It was very accelerated, 5 days a week in class. Sometimes you would have 17 chapters you had to read in one night. Well, it's physically impossible, especially if you're working, if you have a family, you got a life still that's going on too. So I had to make the best use of my time. For me, I'm very visual. Videos. YouTube is going to be your best friend. YouTube, my friends and I joke that we learned everything we know from Google NP, because we would get the topic for the lectures in the next day and literally just Google it. And whatever resources came up, that's what we used to teach ourselves the material in advance of the lecture, that to help you, again, layer on the material so that it really seeps into your brain and you get it. I learned so much more from a 45-minute video presentation where someone is drawing out an organ system and talking about the Patho-Phys than I do from reading for 3 straight hours, chapters and chapters and chapters. It doesn't work for me. Maybe it works for you, didn't work for me. So I will include below some of my favorite YouTube channels that I frequented often. There are some incredibly smart people out there. And again, you've got to vet your resources about who you're learning from, because anybody can put anything out there, but there are some great ones. Louisville Lecture Series, oh, they have some fabulous stuff about every topic you could think of. So Louisville Lecture Series, anything that has the hashtag FOMED, that stands for Free Open Access Medical Education. That is very good material to key in on. From Twitter, Instagram, add that hashtag to your arsenal. The Critical Care Guru. All right, this guy, I can't remember his name. This is like the most haphazard video. He just basically it's a critical care physician who was talking to a group of staff about ventilator management. And it's not the best quality, but man, I have referred to that video so many times, even in practice, and I give it to all my students that come through with me. If you're going into critical care, you need to watch it, because he really breaks down the management of the ventilator at the bedside. And MedCram. This guy talks about acute problems, chronic problems, kind of outpatient, inpatient. He goes into many, many different topics, and he breaks it down into very small, digestible videos that don't take too long to present. So those are the 2 things you need to do kind of well in advance of starting. Now let's move on to the 3 things you need to do right before you start. And I mean like the summer or the few months before you start school. 1 is shore up your personal business. Any house repairs that you need to accomplish that have been building, that you've been putting off for a while, just go ahead and do it. because the last thing you want is a situation like I got into where a bathroom leak happened and we had to do a complete reno of a bathroom while I was in school and working and raising children with a husband who traveled. Super stressful, and nobody wants to be pressured to pick out tile. I mean, what if it's not perfect? So take care of those things that you know of in advance before you start school. All that tedious stuff like life insurance, health insurance, any of those things that need to be taken care of before you start school, do it. You're not going to deal with that kind of a hassle while you're in school. Any doctor's visits for yourself or your kids. My gosh, I've got 3 kids. That's 6. Dentists, doctors, that's 6 visits. I did them all in the summer right before I went back to school, so I didn't have to think about it once we started school. Take all of the things off your plate that you possibly can right before you start. Trust me, you're going to want to, because those low-hanging fruit, that you're not going to get to them. They just are not going to happen for the 2 years, 3 years, however long that you're in school. If you're like me, you're the kind of person who wants to study as much as you can in advance. If you have a friend in the class above you, see if you can get their syllabuses, just so you can find out what the content is and start putting in the hard work to learn it. This is where it applies to everybody. See, this is what's cool about this. This is not just specific for acute care NPs. When you start school, everybody's in the same core classes, just like when you start nursing school. You're all going to be in Patho-Phys, you're all going to be in pharmacology, so focus on those. Those are likely going to be your first 2 classes. For Patho-Phys, go back to anatomy and physiology. Literally go through every organ of the body and try and understand how it works in a normal state so that you can understand how it works in a disease state. They're going to assume you've already taken A&P, which you did, but it may be like me, it may have been 20 years ago. So brush up on that kind of stuff. I did it through YouTube. However works for you, but find some way to brush up on the basics. Same with pharmacology, y'all. This is a heavy, heavy class with a lot of drugs thrown at you very rapidly, and you just got to know them. So brush up on that, in particular antibiotics. All right, now friends, if you're my acute care friends, they are not just going to focus on the IV antibiotics you're used to seeing in the hospital. They want you to know all the outpatient management for all the outpatient infections. Oh, it's so hard. So start now. Use your guidelines. Man, the Infectious Disease Society of America, that is your best resource, friends. Go to the website and download the guidelines for the population that you intend to treat. For example, I work in acute care. I do a heck of a lot of treatment of community-acquired pneumonia, hospital-acquired pneumonia, MRSA. Download them and start studying those, because those are guaranteed to be on test in your class. They're guaranteed to be on your boards, and this is what they want to teach you. So go ahead and just stick those in your brain. You need to know those. If your specialty is something else, focus on what the treatment is for your population. If you're in pediatrics, focus on what the treatment is for them. That's what they're going to teach you. Other guidelines I think they're going to expect you to know would be the GOLD initiative for the treatment of COPD. It goes through the various tracks of chronic versus acute on chronic versus acute treatment of COPD. This is a prevalent disease that everyone needs to know how to treat, whether you're outpatient or inpatient. So that's something, just go ahead and start studying it early. It's really not that hard, actually. Go ahead and study that. They're going to test you on it. It's going to be on boards. You're going to have to do it in practice, so do that. Hypertension. Everybody got high blood pressure up in here. You're going to have to treat high blood pressure whether you're in the outpatient or inpatient setting for sure. This is going to guide you in a stepwise fashion on how to treat hypertension, and it starts from the clinic setting. Certain populations you treat differently. African Americans you treat a little bit differently than some of the other populations, and what the specific drugs are used to treat that. And if this doesn't work, then you try this, and if this doesn't work, then you try this. You bet your bottom dollar they're going to test you on that, and it's going to be a complicated question. You're not going to be able to guess your way out of it, because you're going to have to do this in practice. This is why they test you on it. So find out what the latest JNC guidelines are. I think it's JNC 8. Print it out. Start memorizing that. It will set you heads and tails above your cohort who may not know those answers during that lecture, and you will, and you're going to look like a smarty pants, and it's going to ring that brownie point bell. Step number 5. This has a 2-part answer, and it depends on the type of person you are. If you're the kind of person who gets easily overwhelmed, you need to take a mini vacation before you start school. Maybe the 2 weeks beforehand, it seems like a good time frame to me. Go to the beach, go to the mountains, go to wherever your happy place is, and just bask in the relaxation of not having anything to do, because it's the last time it's going to happen until Christmas break, and even then won't be much of a break. So go enjoy your me time before school starts. If you're not the kind of person who needs that, I would say work. Pick up extra shifts and save as much money as you can, because things are about to get real expensive, especially when you're not working as much. So choose how you want to spend your final summer before school, but it may involve extra work. And that's it, friends. That's all you got to do. I shouldn't say all, it's actually a lot of work. So doing all of these things is going to start this ball rolling. You're going to be gradually implementing the workload into your life that you probably haven't done in a while, to slowly get your mind and your body and your family in the routine of things are about to get really busy. And it makes it just slightly less traumatic and slightly less sucky when the day you start back to school and you have 20 assignments, because you will on day one. You're like, what did I just do? It kind of gradually gets you to that phase. So I highly recommend that you do this. And just remember, if you're going to a 2-year program, 2 years are going to pass whether you're in school or not. One of my most favorite mentors of all time told me that, and those were the words that stuck in my mind when things got really bad. You can do this. Start with the end in mind and gradually go into it. Good luck, friends.